Okay, I'm trying again. Don't get me particularly enjoy it, but um, I feel that I want to anyway. I think it's maybe important in a way. Okay. So I think basically I'm going to say, as I always say at the start, I think from my information, as limited as it may be, we're spiritual beings in a physical body. So that kind of means, I suppose, if I say that, we're spiritual beings in a physical body. So we're spiritual beings in a physical body. So that kind of means that we come here. In other words, our physical body is not our natural element, shall we say, I guess. Hard for me to believe too. So don't think that I'm particularly intellectual or smart by saying it, because I'm not. But that's how I see it, and that must be it. Because if we're spiritual beings but we're in a physical body, that means our body is not our whole thing. And we have probably come here and come into this physical domain, and we have to have the physical body to be in this physical domain. Now, I'm assuming that from what I have got the information, that we come here by choice. And in light of the information that I might proceed to tell you further along, if I can still remember it, that makes sense to me, because the way things operate, even in this world that we live in now, there is always a choice, and there's always has to be a consent. Sometimes we don't know what we're consenting to. This is the problem, I think. But we do actually give consent to everything. And that seems to me that, and I don't quite know why, but it's almost as though the universe, or even the way this world operates, as though there has to be a consent. And I'm assuming that if that's the case, that if we don't give consent, or if there was like to where, instead of say asking me what if there's a choice between something, instead of someone asking me and saying, do you want this or do you not, they just barge in and take over. You know what I'm saying? And clearly that actually probably isn't how things are actually even allowed to operate, shall we say? And you'd probably say, well, that's generally how you like to see the world too. But I don't think it actually is, but because I think that you can be given a choice, but if you haven't got the correct information and you're not fully aware or whatever, you're going to make the negative choice probably anyway. But anyway, I won't go on about that. I'll say we're spiritual beings and we come here, and in order to come here into this earth realm, shall we say, we have to have a physical body. So the spirit comes in to a physical body. This was how we were made. Now, that mean well, that means that even if you take it from a religious point of view, I would think that means that when we were created with the physical body, we were spiritual beings, and we were given a kind of perfect physical vehicle to maneuver this world, shall we say, this domain that was supposed to be ours, I think. But anyway, I'll just say the main points and then I'll get on to what I think is a little history, but it might be a bit hard to comprehend and a bit complicated. It is for me, to be quite honest, and it probably sounds a bit almost unbelievable. But you have to piece it together, and you do have to accept certain truths, or accept that they are a truth, or at least think they're a possibility, right? Because you know you can only piece things together. Now it's hard. We're spiritual beings in a physical body. We're all connected, and our thought creates reality. This is how we were originally created, I believe, right? In the very beginning. Spiritual beings in a physical body that would have been perfect for us to do many things, perhaps, have many abilities and develop those. We were all connected, in other words, connected like at a mental level to where we could not only transmit our thoughts to other human beings, because you see, what I'm trying to say is that human beings' thought evidently creates reality. Yes, it's hard to believe. I wish I could create something in front of you right now to prove it. But you see, this is the whole thing, is that this was how it was meant to be, but we are now very limited because there has been, you're talking about many, many, many years. And as I've said before, I do not think that we have evolved. I think we have devolved, and we have gone more in another direction. And but if you think about it this way, right? We're spiritual beings. We're in a physical body that was perfect originally, and we were all connected, and our thought created reality. Just our very thinking could manifest a physical thing. In other words, whatever we thought of in our full thinking could manifest into physical reality. Yes, that sounds pretty unbelievable, and it actually is. I think so too. But if you bear with me, just think about the possibility. But we're also all connected, okay? So that means that my thoughts could also be transmitted to another human being, just mentally. Like the so-called internet that we have, the artificial internet that we have, the unnatural internet that now serves for that purpose, even though, if you think about it, it certainly doesn't function that way to where just my thought now can be transmitted to every other human being on the planet. I emphasize that too because human beings also, we're all at a limited level, most of us now anyway, even if you're aware of it like I am, still down there with everyone else and not operating at full capacity. But even to be aware, if everyone was aware, I think we could perhaps have an advantage, or at least be able to utilize our skills a bit again. But while you have an ability and you don't know you have an ability, you're not only not going to use that ability, but it's going to be misused. It's going to be used and you're not consciously aware that you're even using it, because that's another thing too. If your thought creates reality, and this just occurred to me, we have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. Most people know that. The subconscious mind is probably bigger than the conscious mind. Could be wrong, but either way, it's at least equal. And you are not aware of what your subconscious is thinking, because that is something that we also now, I think, don't have. I do not know what my subconscious mind is thinking right this very minute. I'm consciously talking to you right now, and I'm aware of what I'm saying, and I might think I'm saying something good or something productive, but my subconscious mind could be thinking quite destructively. And so that is a thought that is also out there creating reality. And combining that with every human being that's on the planet, what if they're doing the same thing? Maybe that's why we've got the mess world that we're in, because we have not got control anymore. I think we once did probably have control of our whole mind, but now we only have control of the conscious mind, and even that we have difficulty controlling, as you well know. We get angry, we get this, we get that, we get a lot, and we are continually bombarded with what's around us, and we react to that. We are downloaded with information and we react to the information. We always assume it's correct and we react accordingly, and even if it's, whether it is or not, we react. But our subconscious mind is functioning all the time too. And if thought creates reality, that also will be, out there creating reality, but we are unaware of that. We're also unaware that even our conscious mind directly creates reality. We do not think we have that potential or that ability. We think that if we think of an idea, we have to physically bring it into play by our actions, because that's the world that we live in, because we are spiritual beings who come into a physical domain, in a physical body, and we're very much into that physical domain. We do not think that just the power of our thinking has any input on the physical world. But in reality, we are just minds as far as the information that I'm now being given, which blows my mind, which sounds silly, I know, blows my mind to think of it too, because I'm no different to anyone else. And in the sense that I just see myself as just a human in a physical body. And I really do still feel that and think that, but I think this information is correct. But because of my limited indoctrination for a lifetime, I think that's true, but I still cannot fully put it into practice. And also, I'm just one person, don't forget, and there's a lot of other human beings, and all our thinking together should be a lot more in sync. But it's actually not, because I'm trying to think of examples of how to think of it. But I was just thinking before, it'd be a bit like, hey, us humans, supposing we were like a bird, right? We're human beings, and we're human beings, and our thought creates reality. But like a bird, right? Like a bird can fly. But if that bird had an ability, which his ability is to fly, but that bird had never been told or never thought there was any possibility that he could flap his wings and fly, I wonder, would he just any more naturally be able to fly? Um, or would he just get around on his legs thinking that was his lot? And I think that's probably not a very good example, but I think that's like we are, like even those that are aware of, because we do hear that some human beings have more abilities than others. We do know that, don't we? Because we see that. I mean, we see that some people might be a bit more psychic or a bit more this or that. Even that is probably still very limited. But if the potential is really there that human thought creates reality, and we're all connected, a hive mind, you could almost say, whereas we tend to think of ourselves as separate. We do. We think we're connected by the artificial internet, by the tech, and we think that we consciously control that by pressing buttons and whatever. What I think is it's the opposite, that we were originally all connected naturally, and that our thought still can create reality, but we no longer have control over that. We have we're not aware that we do that, and also we do not have control over it, because our thinking and our thoughts are very much governed by this physical world that's around us. And that is, in my opinion, an artificial construct that it is like, as I've said before, I think in a video game. We are humans put into this world, spiritual beings put into this physical world, which is like a video game. We are players in the video game, but we do not control the video game, we just think we do. The video game operates around us, and we have given ourselves over to the video game. We do not think that we create the video game. We do not think that our thought creates reality. We have given ourselves over to the video game. And the video game is controlled by something else as well. So we're not alone. This video game is a video game constructed for us but we created by our thoughts, but our thoughts are not controlled by us much now. They are controlled by the video game because, in other words, how should I put it? It's like this. How I think and how I behave is I'm always reacting to what's around me. I'm not assuming that I could change that or create that with my own thought or have any input. I am just always reacting to what's around me. And most of the time that's negative. And I can say that for a fact because we do live in a very negative world. The whole, it's like the video game operates through duality and everything being in reverse and opposite. In the video game operates a certain way because that's how it's just how it operates really, but it's how human beings operate now too. I'm saying that if we could create reality with our thought, we wouldn't be just reacting. Whereas I think it's hard to explain, but I think we're in the video game, and instead of us thinking that we can control it with our thinking, we are really just reacting to what's put in front of us by the video game. And that video game, the control of the video game is operated by the entity that operates in duality. Duality is love, hate, right, wrong, black, white. It's always putting the two things together. I mean, it's hard to explain and it's hard to comprehend, but it happens every second of every day for all of us. We are always thinking right, wrong. We're always thinking black, white. We're always thinking good, bad. Everything is good, bad. Nothing is just neutral. Most of the time. And we react to it. We see something in the video game and we react thinking that's good or bad. That's right or wrong. That's, and then we set up the video game according to that too. It's like a never-ending thing where we're always playing in this thing, always playing this game almost. Well, it is a game. Of course, it's a game, but it's not a game that we can really win if we are just chasing it round, this right, wrong, this duality, this love, hate all the time. If we are not aware that we actually, just by the power of thought, can change the whole game, because if we're spiritual beings in a physical body, we're all connected and our human thought can create reality, then there's no real need for all this, I was about to say this kind of world that is artificial. We do not really need anything artificial at all, because if human thought creates reality, there should be no need for anything at all, because we already have it all. Because that means, is there nothing greater than the power of creation? Because that's how I see it, if this is true. Now, obviously, even if we were ignorant, which we all are, and we have lost this ability, and we don't even acknowledge it, and we don't believe, and we haven't got full control over it either, because like I say, there's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and clearly I do not know what my subconscious mind is thinking right this very second. So I don't actually have control over it. I think we should, but we don't. Now, this, I think, is because down through at some point, I think we did have our full mind, and I think that we were not influenced by this duality. We were not into the duality. This is something where there has been intervention, where we have been changed a bit, shall we say. Now, this is a bit like the world today, right? We have brought technology into our mental capacity and it operates with us. And I think that the force that controls this world is technological, and the whole world is now technological. It's covered by a technology. We are no longer operating with what I would call our natural intellect, because, like I say, human beings, thought creates reality, and we're all connected. To me, that is a natural internet that if it was fully working, I would think that its potential and its easiness and its power that it would give to each individual would be very vast, I would think, if you believe this and if it's true. But instead, we are governed. Perhaps govern's not the right word. I'm not very good at picking the right words. Well, actually, I mean, if you want to look at it another way, does not the internet, the technological internet of this world, does it not control our lives? Does it not control you? Does it not control me? Can you live without it? You know, do you not believe what it says or what, what is on the screen and all this sort of stuff? Do you not think that it is the only way that you can communicate? Of course. So, so it is a controlling, governing force. Now, whether you want to say that you think that your technical internet is better than your natural internet and that you have full control over it, that's up to you. I would doubt it, but that's up to you. Because you, unlike your natural internet computer that should be functioning, you do have control over that because that is your natural mind. You don't need input from forces or other human beings that you don't know. You have full control of that. Whereas this artificial technology, do you really know where it comes from? Do you really know where it originated from? Who, I mean, you might say someone invented and all this sort of stuff, but the point is that doesn't really matter. And that depends on how much you want to believe too. But you do not really have full control over it at all. You think you do because you press buttons, but it is an outside artificial system. It's a system, and it's not natural to you. It is not a human system. You might say, well, humans invented it, so therefore it's human. I do not think that's true anyway. I think humans did invent it, but I do not think that it is a human invention in truth. By that, I mean that I don't think that, how should I say, I think that it was given to humans by an outside force. It's the direction that you're directed to go. And this is the duality of the world, where there's always the crossroads and the choice. I'm not doing these videos very good. I only wish that I could explain them in detail and get it more across. Look, there is an entity that rules this earth, right? That's how I see it. Now, whether you want to say that's just the important people, the important so-called humans that run this world, you can do that if you want to, or you can take it further and say that perhaps there is something even more superior than that, because and that is only because I'm assuming that even the humans that run things have a lot more technology perhaps going for them than what we actually get. Because, you know, like even with science, as you know yourself, we get the science after they've been mucking around in the labs for an awful long time. And even then, you only get information. You don't always know what they might do with it. I know if I was a crazy mad scientist and I had discovered the secret to eternal life and all the genetics and stuff, which I believe they now have, because I don't think you have to actually look very far. Even though I'm not very scientific, I have seen stuff on the actual internet. There again, it's always put there for you. It's not like they actually hide as much as what you think, because I think that that even the forces that control this world have to put a certain amount of truth out there. But and then you accept it and let it slide, and it goes, and that's an acceptance of things. Now, I say that if I just see a little thing on the news or something about how scientists have just recently discovered this or just cloned this or just done that, I'm not going to take that too serious, because I'm going to think, oh, what are they going to do with that? Not much. And even if they do, it'll be a long time, and then it will be for my benefit. But in reality, if I was like a scientist or someone at the top and I've just discovered the secret to eternal life, you know, why wouldn't I just keep it for myself and my family and those that I favour? Am I really going to give it to 8 billion other people when I could then control this world, you see? And this is, I think, how it happens. And we've given that power over because we, as human beings, if what I said is true, that we can create reality with our thought and we're all connected, then, you know, all this stuff that we see really means very little in a way, because it means that we're kind of going along a backward path in a way. Because if science is telling us, oh, well, yes, we can create this gene and we can do this and that, that sounds very impressive. But like I say, if human beings, their thought can create reality, it's almost like they have unlimited power in that respect. If that was true, and if they utilized it, and if they were aware of it and had full potential, and this is what I think originally, Garden of Eden or whatever, they originally had it all, but they got tempted to go down this thinking that they could get more of something else, because they hadn't fully developed all their abilities at that point anyway, maybe. Or maybe they just got tricked like we do, like you have two choices, like even now, it's like still like I'm saying. Oh, gee, this is so hard to explain, and even I find it hard. It's like we're always given a choice. We seem to have to be, and I'm not sure why that is, but I'm a kind of assuming that even though there is a technical entity that governs and controls and rules almost this earth, it's the one God. All religions, I would have to say this, all religions worship the one God. They don't know it, but they all worship the one God. It's the one entity. The one entity has always been there for a long, long time, apart from maybe the very beginning. I'm assuming that at the very beginning there were just humans, and they were made very well and did have many abilities, and they were, well, you know, just think about it yourself. Spiritual beings in a physical body, their very thought can create physical reality, and they're all connected. Can you think about those 3 points and then try and say, what would that make a human being? What is that human being really? what can they do? Their very thought can create a physical reality. And all combined as well, totally connected. Now, this is the reverse, as I said before, in this duality world we live in, to what really exists now. Now, the God, at some point, I think, from my information, a bit like a Garden of Eden scenario, right? The human being was seduced by a being that come from somewhere else, shall we say. This being, very technologically advanced, extremely technologically advanced, but not a spiritual being. Human beings are spiritual beings, their thought creates reality. But technologically advanced, the human was impressed by the technological being. The technological being could technically create illusions and impress and that sort of thing, right? The human being, like I am now, saw itself by comparison as lesser, perhaps, even low. The human being, by their very thought, could create reality. The technological being creates things technically. But the human being was impressed by the technological being. Very advanced technological being. Would be impressed if I saw it right now. Could live a long time, maybe. Astronomical amounts of time. What we would consider to be immortal. But also, there's no reason to believe that the human being, if they could create reality, then they must be immortal. But they didn't think past all this. They were in their little, like the Garden of Eden, almost innocent, did not actually have much. They had not developed enough, shall we say, not had enough. And because they were not into duality thinking at that time and were not in the world like we know it now, they did not question or suspect anything. It'd be a bit like children, right? Very smart children, but they see a strange creature come and they're fascinated. And they don't have any reason to believe that that strange creature would have anything bad towards them or would want to toy with them or trick them in any way or seduce them for any purpose. They would not think that because they would be, I suppose innocent is the word in a kind of way, but you know, it's a bit like until you've been burnt a few times in this world. You start out as children a lot more innocent, and then as life progresses and you get burnt by the reality of this duality, love, hate, right, wrong, black, white, dark, light world, you know, that you then start to become cynical and even suspicious. But even that is only as much as this world gives you the information, because I think that's actually a bad thing in a way. But even so, I will say that if at the start the humans were just basically there and they were seduced, like by the snake in the Garden of Eden, shall we say, for however they were, I do not know, but you know, and they've probably thought, hey, what have I got to lose? Maybe I'm only surmising this. Maybe even Eve, if we're going to say the woman, thought, oh well, what have I got to lose by following the serpent and seeing what he's got to offer? And just, it probably sort of a bit of fun even, you know, he's offering me all this knowledge. Oh, your God that created you is keeping you in the dark. Of course, the God was keeping them in the dark, only in the sense I would think that, see, is there, is there, is it good to know love, hate? Is it good to know right, wrong? Is it good to have all these rules, all these regulations, all these laws? You know, in the Garden of Eden, there was none of that. Now we think that is normal and we think it's desirable because we're living in the duality world. But there was no duality then. Human beings were perfect. They had no need of duality because their thought could create reality. If you follow me, I mean, I'm even trying it hard to grasp that myself. But it's like if they were created or part of creation and they could create, you see, they had no need of knowledge. The knowledge that was being offered to them by the serpent was a lesser knowledge than what they themselves already had. Because you don't need to be a great scientist or understand science. If you can create, that's all there is. You are the creator. So no technological God, no matter how much they can impress you with science, with their technology, with whatever, is in that same street. So that's a big thing. And look, if it's true, it should put a different view on things. So what I guess I'm saying is, if this is the real reality, then no science, no genius, no God, technological controlling force that can offer you this, that, or anything and can technologically do things could compare with the power of the original human being who did not have to know science because science did not exist because they were science. Because if you can create everything and anything, then no technology, no I think that is why, you know, like it's like, how could there be even a comparison? Even if, you know, like go back to the Garden of Eden, it's what I think is a history, but the way it's put in the Bible makes it sound like a fantasy. I'm saying that that serpent thing is just another being, like a human being, but not a human being, a technological being. And the technological being does not have the spirit, because the spirit is the thing that evidently, as far as my information goes, is what means that the human thought can create reality. A non-spiritual being cannot create by their thought a physical reality. This is what I've been led to believe, right? Whereas a human being, by their very thought, can create a physical reality. The technological being has a lot of tricks. the technological being can use technology like we use on this planet now. I'm saying that that is alien to our natural human condition as we originally were. I'm saying that the technology is of the technological being, the non-human entity. This could appear as a god to us, because if we do not think that we can create a physical reality with our thinking and that we're all connected, like I have been led to believe, then we would naturally think that the technological God is superior and can create. And the technological God will create if you let him. And he has. And we have let this happen. And we have a choice. We've always had a choice, just like Eve had the choice in the Garden of Eden. She was told not to eat of the forbidden fruit. She saw that as a restriction. Why should I not eat of the forbidden fruit? Now, that is a bit like me saying, look, yeah, we're natural, spiritual human beings, and we are now living in an unnatural technological world. So we have the choice which way we go. And I think we are now at that crossroads, because most of human history we've sort of been going along a kind of neutral path. You know, we've always been directed by the technological God that rules this domain, but we haven't actually had the technological, the real technology actually right in our mind and in our space, right in us, or like we have now, where we react according to the technology, by the information the technology gives us. We don't stop and say, look, oh, that's a terrible thing that the technology has just told me, but hey, I'm just going to walk away because, hey, it doesn't matter because my human thought creates reality and I'm all connected to every human being, so I can change that. It doesn't have to be. We don't think we can do that. And the way things are, because we are now operating through the technology and we do not have control of our full mind. And like I said, I don't think we've had control of our full mind for quite a long time anyway. I don't know when this would have happened, but certainly at some point there was, I think, and this is what I've been led to believe, yeah, like a missing link, right? Like we believe in evolution and all that, but there is a missing link, as everyone talks about. And that missing link does fit in with intervention by the technological God that has ruled this domain for a long time and operates under duality, to where we go further and further. And this is where it gets to be funny, because, you know, I'm not a religious person, but it almost gets into, it definitely gets into a religious kind of vein. But then again, as I've said before, if we're spiritual beings in a physical body, because to me this now I think is becoming a kind of physical reality, in the sense that I think it is logical and is true and is a fact in a way, because, you know, you can talk about spirituality and spirit, and that seems to most people now probably like, oh, airy fairy, that's not the physical world, that's not logical, that's not intellectual, right? But if it really is true, then it is intellectual and it is the reality. This technological stuff is not the real reality. That's what I think. That is the illogical, because if we really are spiritual beings in a physical body, our thought creates reality and we're all connected, then all this technological stuff is the false stuff, really. And we're buying into it. Not only are we buying into it, it is ruling our life and has taken over our spiritual being. We don't believe in it. We're like a bird that is supposed to fly, and we don't think we can fly, and we'll never try, and we're losing the ability even because you can lose that you could. It's a bit like if you don't use something, they say if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, look at it's hard to explain, but you kind of get what I'm saying in a way. And like, I'm no different to you. This is all strange and a mystery to me because I'm like everyone else. I live the same as everyone else. And I use the technology. I live in this real world that is now way out of control. We have no control over it. We have no control over, one thing I do know is, you know, the technology controls me. I do not control it. I do think that. I know that. I don't know about you. And you're dependent on it too. And doesn't it seem stupid that we should be dependent on something limiting and controlling if our thought creates reality and we're all connected? If this is the truth, we're way off course as human beings. In fact, if that's the case, we're in a diabolical situation, I would say. And more so as we are, I think, this is how I see it now, that we are heading towards total crossroads to where we are going to go one way or the other. And to me, this is how I see it. And, call me whatever you want. And, I hope I'm wrong. But there is only two paths. And I think this is the duality of the world. We're always faced with two choices. This is what I say: right, wrong, black, white, left, right, um, love, hate, very much that in this world, that love, hate thing. And this is because I think that if originally we were all united and our thought creates reality, there wouldn't have been so much duality and there would have been very little hate, I would think. But that's all been so confused, I think, by this whole world and this way that it operates. Even if you just forget about a higher power and say that it's ruled just by humans, but some of the humans, as you know, the humans that I invest my trust into, that rule this world, because I don't rule the world, because my thought, even though it's creating reality, I don't have control over it because I'm not aware of that, and I'm not operating in unison or in sync with all the other human beings. Instead, I'm operating by this artificial internet and all this tech stuff, which is controlled by either other human type beings, shall we say. And when I say human type, because I think that, the old saying, power corrupts and all this sort of thing. Look, the minute, like I say, if you're a scientist and you've developed eternal life and stuff, you might just say, hey, I don't want to share that with the whole human race. We've got 8 billion people now. We'll end up swamped by them all. I'll just keep it for my own little sect, because we'd all be tempted to do that, I think. And I think this is what happens half the time, So, do you get that? Because even I can get that, and yet I'm making out to be a goody. I'm saying to human beings, this and that, but I still have to admit that it's tempting, that sort of thing. And more so if, if you have bought into the duality of this world by the tech god that rules it anyway, because that's assuming there's something higher up. But even humans, even at their human level, can be changed and can think that they have to deal in the physical world. So in other words, even at a scientific level, they're not, because they don't think they can create reality and they're all connected. If they found the secret to eternal life, like just scientifically at a genetic level, um, they're probably not going to want to give it to everyone, you know. And they're not going to think, hey, I don't even need that, or I don't have to be selfish, and I don't have to think, oh, if I share it too much, it's less for me, or this or that, because they wouldn't have bought into that duality material world, because they would just know that they could have everything anyway, you see, because, you know what I'm trying to say, because if human thought can create reality, then basically anyone should be able to have whatever they want, probably, I would think. You know, I don't know. It's bizarre, I know. You know, and I mean, I certainly haven't mastered. Look at me. You know, I mean, but I think that that is a possibility. But I think that at some point there was intervention, and the missing link, yeah, where humans changed and went a certain way. They didn't evolve naturally, I don't think. No, and they have lost their awareness as times went on to all their abilities. They have agreed over and over again to different scenarios, and every time they agree to something new, I think they are limiting themselves more. This is how I see it, because I see us as devolving rather than evolving. Because I think at the beginning we probably had great potential for quite so much. And now that potential is not even in our hands. And I think that we see the potential as things outside of ourselves. You know, we see that the computer has more than us, you know, rather than saying that we are the natural master computer that should have been able to do everything and anything, you know. So it's actually um, the reverse once again. It's very hard to explain, but that's why there's so much confusion. Now, the only reason I use the Garden of Eden or religion as an example is because I think that there is great possibility that there is a history in all these things, and that, you know, we all know there have been civilizations down through the ages. We all know that ancient Egypt was a great civilization that eventually fell. We know that there was all these different empires. Some of them we think are true, and some we think are fantasy even. So I don't know. But I think that everything we are presented with is probably true, but we are put into that duality where we can't discern it for ourselves. How could we know? Because, like, I've only got a limited lifetime. You know, I'm only here for a few years. Whereas if I was here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years as the technological God that I think covers this domain, this earth, has been around for, and is aware of all this. So they accumulate knowledge, you see. They accumulate their technological knowledge even. Whereas humans don't accumulate anything, because they are here for a very limited time. And assuming that, if you want to assume that we're here, but that we really had immortality, shall we say, because I'm saying that probably originally in the Garden of Eden. And certainly I think the human lifespan was much greater years and years and years ago, but I'm talking about a long number of years. I'm not talking about just like 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. I'm talking about, yeah, a long, long time, but you can't prove that. But there is some evidence to it. But either way, even that is still not immortality. But I think that our span here on this earth has got less and less, and that means that we do not have any knowledge from any previous time. So we're not, so I as a human, that's why I'm only now coming into this information. And God only knows how many years, because I know that it's my whole life here, and I'm coming into it now on my last time and last, few years almost, because I'm not young. I could be gone very soon, even if especially in the world that we live in today, because it's not a conducive world even for this natural human computer that is meant to be functioning better too. I think that the technological world is in opposition to the natural human mind and the natural human body. But that's also a bit of a thing too, to where then people will, when they're at these crossroads of saying, shall I go human or technology? They say, well, yes, I think we'll go the technology route, because even that might offer them more at the bodily level too, because the human body is so compromised. But this is not how it was meant to be. And if the human thought, what I'm saying is that human beings should have been able to control their body, their mind, and their whole reality. But instead, they have got control of nothing. And instead, it's, they're directed now by the technology as well, and think that technology, just like they think science, will have the answer. Now, I don't like to talk religious, but I just use it as examples, right? And so I'm going to use Jesus Christ as an example too. And I just hope that I can get it across. And I certainly don't want to offend anyone, you know. Now, he come, if you assume that he was a man, right? Okay. He was a man who came. Now, some people say he was the Son of God. Well, look, okay. Does it fit what I've said? Human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body. I'm exhausted. Their thought can create a reality, and they're all connected. Someone like Jesus Christ comes. Some people say Son of God. Okay. He may or may not have said it. Don't think he did, but even if he did, it could have meant a whole lot of things. He, as a human being, was aware, I think, of what I've just said. He knew, and he was trying to tell human beings, I think, that yes, their human thought creates reality, they're all connected. They do not have to be, as he himself said, be in this world but not of this world. To be of this world means that you are going away from your spiritual natural abilities, and you are entering into the physical domain, to where you are giving away your power. In a way, you're giving away, you're not aware when you think that it's all physical, but that physical is actually only in your control if you physically grab it, shall we say, or if you physically control it. You do not think that your thinking is creating the reality. Now, he may well have been someone who was aware of this, and you could even say that he might have even, he was not a scientist or a philosopher or any of those things, but he might have been aware. If he was aware of those basics, and if they are true, then he did not need to know science to know that he could do things. And this might even account for the miracles or anything that you think is kind of supernatural or not of what we consider to be real in this physical reality. It's a bit like Like I say, if you don't think you have an ability, like if flying seemed magical to you and to a bird, that is normal to fly. But if that bird didn't think that he could fly, if he had never been told and told that there's no such thing as flying, you know, he would probably be like us. He would probably be thinking, oh, I've got to use my little head to invent an aeroplane or to invent something artificially to fly. You see, yeah, I would have to invent something artificially in order to fly because otherwise I'll never get off the ground. He wouldn't know that he could just flap his wings and fly. And I think this is, you know, with human beings in a way. And I think that maybe that Jesus man, or you know, you if you want to say then that if he had mastered the ability to create and to do things with the mind, and if he was aware of this and at a higher level spiritually, you know, because you know he obviously was spiritual, then you know he's just someone who's at the level that he was kind of saying that all humans should be at, I think. But I could be wrong. And this probably would not have fitted in with the world that was around then, much less now, because it's a world of the physicality and it is controlled by the technological type thing. Now, this is different to the human, as I say, and if you think it's superior to the human, you know, that would be reasonable for you to think that in today's world and even back then. It would be reasonable. If, you know, if the technological God had appeared even in the past and appeared to Adam and Eve or to whoever, it would be reasonable for them to have been impressed and to have perhaps, in my opinion, disillusioned them to where they would be tempted and just even string along and even think, oh, this might offer us something, I'm interested, have a look, rather than sort of saying, hey, oh, I was told not to eat of the forbidden fruit of knowledge and stuff. And they would say, why would that be the case? Yes, that's like closing a door. Whereas in reality, if they already had the ability to create everything and they were perfect, they weren't really being closed the door. That door was, they were given the choice and they were told it would not be wise for you to open that door or to go with the serpent, because at this stage you will not be able to deal with him. And if you follow him, he will offer you something, that's right. But what you already have is actually so much more. You just don't know it. And if you follow him and go further and further down his path, before you have developed your own abilities, you will follow his technological way of looking at things, his duality. And this will take you further from your development as a spiritual beings where you could have had so much more. You see, that's how I kind of see that scenario, if that premise is correct, you see. Does that make sense to you? And it does fit the biblical kind of thing as well, but I only use that as an example because I think that something like this has happened, because I think that there is truth to, you know, I think that also in this world that we live in now, you know, in order to get humans to go down that path, it has to be seductive, and there has to be a lot of there has to be where you really get pulled into this video game, this world, this artificial construct of this technological kind of God, to where you get pulled right into it. Now, I think in the past, we thought we lived in a pretty natural world. And so even though we were no doubt directed even from the Garden of Eden into the knowledge or the technological kind of thing, basically I think if you look at the world now, you can see that it is very much that way. You couldn't deny it. So it's, if you really look around, it's full blown that this world is ruled by a technological God. Even if you just want to be really simplistic about it and say, hey, technology rules. And it's your God because you need it, you're dependent on it, you rely on it, you believe it, and you're directed by it a lot of the time. So that in itself is like a God, isn't it? But I think there is much more to it, because I now see this, because if you believe those original premises that we're spiritual beings in a physical body, we are all connected and our thought creates reality, then there is much more to the human being. But we do not think that, we are not practicing it, and we are finding it hard to practice it, and we are completely bamboozled by this physical, technological, almost movie that is on around us. It is. It's like you're watching your TV and we're playing in a movie as well. And we believe even half of what we see, even on our fake movie screen, our TV screen. We believe most of that, even though we know that screen is false in front of us. We know it's a technological device. We know it's not, but we believe most of what we see on it. And it's downloaded to us. We watch our shows, we watch our news, we watch this, and we think that's all great, that's all good, or it's bad, but we have reactions to it, and we're taking it in daily for all of our lives. And this is even more around us now because we are now carrying the technology with us. So we don't actually stop and even take a breath half the time and actually look around into the natural world. We only believe that half of what we get from the technology, even though we're then frantic that we might lose this or that, we might lose our natural domain. But, you know, we are losing it because the technology is, think about it, people. Do you think technology mixes with the bird that wants to fly? I don't think it does, but think about it. If you think it does, you know, I won't be here in another few years, so you won't be able to come to me and say, hey, in 40 or 50 years, oh, gee, things have got a bit worse. In fact, maybe there's not much left or something, you know, but we're still recycling and we still do this and we still do that. But hey, everything seems to have gone, you know, I won't be here, you know, to hear it or to see it. And I'm kind of glad, unless, you know, I would just like to see personally a world where we chucked it all away and see how we went on our natural own. Even if we did that for a certain number of years, I'd just like to see where we go, because you could always get technology back. But we aren't going to, but if we go down the path completely of technology, we're not going to be able to get this human stuff back, because the technology will take over. Once you start with all this merging and all this artificial intelligence and all this stuff, and also your mind, if it starts to think that way, you know, because like I say, even now we don't have control over our subconscious, and yet that is also still part of our mind. We don't fully understand the mind, but we're letting all this technology control it. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Someone understands the mind all right, but it ain't us, you know. And that's what I'm trying to say. We should have just been natural and been able to do a lot of these things. But we now have gone so far from us actually kind of controlling the reality around us even. And we don't think we have that power. And we see ourselves a certain way. And like I say, if if we really are only living here on this earth for such a limited time, you know, we cannot know a real lot because we haven't had the time to accumulate, whereas the technological God, if they're around for unlimited amounts of time almost by comparison, they're not going to lose their, they're accumulating even the technological knowledge. Whereas the human being, by bringing that technology and that duality world into their domain, it just creates chaos and confusion for the human being. The human being would naturally be functioning at a perfect level otherwise, I think. You know, look, it's a bit hard to get across, but you'd also have to probably say that if human beings were originally created this way and then they got sidetracked and did, yes, go with the serpent, or even if there was just an intervention at some point in evolution by some other being, look, I think it has to be, to me, it has to be a technological being, right? Because of how the world has gone. And because that goes against what the human being originally was supposed to be. So it is a different force. And the human being at some point may have been made through the intervention of technology. You could almost say technological breeding, almost, by beings that were technological, and they changed the human being at a crucial point in their evolution into the human being that now exists. But that's taken a long time, but there was still some sort of intervention. Evolution, even if you want to believe in evolution, there is the missing link. And the missing link has never been filled. And that's because it can't be filled, because there is a missing link, and because there was some sort of interaction between humans with some other beings that created a different human being. The different human being now, some people, this is how I would see it. Some people might see that intervention as positive, in the sense that they might say, well, aren't we wonderful now? We are a pretty good human being. So that intervention with that other technological being was positive. It's what we are now, and we like what we are now. But if that intervention did make an intelligent, it sort of speeded things up, but in a certain direction. I think in the opposite direction to what we were naturally meant to go. And what I'm saying is that might have speeded things up a little bit for a time, to where human beings thought and could do different things. But, if a human being can physically do something with their hands and start to invent things physically, and even think smart and think that they can manipulate in a physical way, this reality, that would seem to be pretty superior, as though that intervention has been beneficial to the human being. They have invented a technology. They're technically getting better. But if originally spiritual beings in a physical body that could, their thought can create reality, and they're all connected. And this was developed. I don't know, but to me, like, which one to you do you think would be the most superior? Which path do you think would have really been the path that humans would have benefited the most from? To technically slowly manipulate this reality in a physical sense, or to create the reality with a single thought, or combined, etc. And to not be in the confusion, and to not be in the duality and the systems and the all this setup that we have. I don't know. What do you think? You don't, like I say, you have to, you don't, but there's some truth to some of this, even if you don't believe the whole thing. And eventually some of this will come out, but by that time we will have gone even further down a certain path too. So, and of course, with all these things, you can never fully get to the bottom of everything, because we're now limited. We do not know it all, and we do not comprehend things either, because we are now got such a small percentage of what I think our minds were meant to be able to perceive and understand. And even our discernment now is largely, I think, being gone, to where even when you see things happen, this is just how I think, and it even happens to me, where you see things around you and you don't almost question or think of it yourself or make a decision yourself. You almost think, oh, well, whatever they say, that must be right. You tend to go along with the flow of things. And these are just more and more choices, a bit like even the Garden of Eden, where you are making a choice and you're pretty much going just to where you're led, almost like the Pied Piper. In fact, the Pied Piper is a good scenario, I think, of this whole situation. He plays his little flute, and all the children and everyone follows behind. They go to the music, and and I think that is true in the world we live in too. If I won't go into that. I mean, to me, it's not funny. I'm trying to laugh, but I actually am got nothing to laugh about, and even with myself, the more like on a daily basis, I experience the negative spiritual side of it, and I have not believed in a spiritual thing in most of my life, but I now believe that because I see the negative stuff come against me, whereas I had not realized it before. I mostly put it down to myself. Humans blame themselves for everything that happens. But, if we're dealing with all sorts of other forces, and like I say, even with intervention back years and years ago, and I'm talking about not years, I'm talking about unbelievable amounts of time, we're not alone. We are not responsible for this whole reality anymore. We probably should have been, is what I'm saying, but we are not. And also we are not even aware of the technological reality that's around us, much less any spiritual reality that could have been ours, or our abilities that way. So I think we're really at a disadvantage in every way. I don't think that most of us, and this is true of myself too, actually know enough about the spiritual or the technological world we live in. I think we just are given gifts. We took for granted the gifts we were originally given, and we didn't get a chance to develop or utilize them properly. And the physical gifts that we're given, we just take them and don't question them and use them and, abuse them even, you could say, because, once you start to use something too much, dependent on it, it takes over you. You do not take over it. And look, if you think that's okay, and we are also, I think, accepting of it now, instead of saying, hey, that is not natural. Whereas I think even a few years back, most people would probably say that's not really natural. I don't think that's really a human thing. Whereas now we're like almost embracing what is artificial. And look, I know it's all, I'm trying to put it there without using these words too much or emphasizing too much, because I know that even at a real level, even at what you'd call a practical or an intellectual or a scientific level, any word you want to use, I know that it is very hard to fully get to the bottom of all this and to fully comprehend it, and it is almost impossible. You do have to keep it simple. I try to keep it simple because it does get quite beyond you. But essentially what I am trying to say is that you do have to, we're now embracing that artificial kind of stuff. A bit like, if I start to eat plastic, that's artificial. That would seem ridiculous even a few years back, to incorporate the plastic or the artificial substance into my being. But, if we start to think that it's okay and think that it's beneficial, some of us will do that. Maybe a lot of us will do it. And if a certain amount do it, everyone will do it. So there's not that question or that discernment anymore. And because we are living in such a duality, confused world, and we do tend to be fearful, and we believe everything, like Eve believed the serpent was right when he said, come on, I'll show you the tree of knowledge. Yeah, the tree of good and evil. Why would anyone want to know evil? Think about that. Why would you want to know good and evil? Why would you want to know evil? You're doing all right, you're doing great, got everything. Why would you want to know something that is detrimental to you? But she went with it. She was curious, or whatever. I don't know. I can't speak. But at the same time, I know that we are like that as human beings. We've become more like that, but we must have been like it a little bit even then. But maybe at that stage, we were so underdeveloped. Now we're more developed, but we're still that way, because we still do that. We still go for everything. We still want to know the evil. And the rest of the time we just want to bury our head in the sand. That's right. And perhaps then, I don't know, it gets even too confusing for me. But at the same time, if you can see any sort of truth to any of this, and if you can say, hey, I do see a bit of this in the world, because I see it all the time, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And I don't think it's meant to be like this. I really don't. I can't imagine, unless you're greatly benefiting by this physical world to where you're not touched by any of the bad stuff. I really can't see a lot of benefit to it. And personally, this is just my opinion, but I think there could be a lot of truth in it. I don't think anyone on this actual earth is real, you know, there's not going to be very many people or many humans or less than human or whatever you want to say about any human beings or anyone that's on this planet, anything that's on this planet. They're not all going to benefit by all this. In fact, I think there's only going to be a very, very limited amount of anything, anyone, that is going to benefit in the long run by the wrong choices that we make and by going away from our natural state. Even if we had to be tough it out and be ignorant for a while and gradually come into our being again, that would still be a better thing, I think, than rushing into an unknown technological kind of mystery world where we will have not much control over it, and to where I can't imagine why. You see, what I'm trying to say is that the technological being that rules this world, he has been able to seduce and take over and seduce, really, like the Garden of Eden, a being that had more potential in some ways than in the long, long run than even that being, because that being was already technologically advanced, very advanced. But that's because they had been around for so many more years than the original human. The human was starting out, whereas that being had been around for amounts of time that you can't even comprehend, and had not lost any and had accumulated their technological knowledge, but still did not have the ultimate power. But they were able to seduce the fledgling genius, you could say, almost, if you like to look at it that way, and tell that bird that it could not fly. That, hey, I'll show you how to fly. I'll build you an aeroplane. Does a bird need an aeroplane? No, but the bird thought the aeroplane was great. Wow, I can fly in an aeroplane. That's the example that I'm using, and I know it's silly, but hey, it might if you kind of get what I'm trying to say. I hope I'm putting it across right. I'm just, I'm really trying hard to find the things that will make a bit of sense, or to where you can sort of grasp what, not so much even what I'm trying to say, but what I've been um, what the information is that I've now got, and to me that's information too. But I'm not going to be like everyone else where I just pick it up off a computer, off a technological thing. I am going to base it on a little bit of myself and a little bit of what I've seen in my whole life, and really trying to figure everything out, because I really think that, I know in my case I thought my life depended on it, so it does put a desperation into it. Whereas I think most people, they're probably like, oh, well, they don't think their life depends on it because they don't see themselves as spiritual beings anyway, and they don't see that they could be missing out on something more. They think that if they go along with what is now, that then they're going to go for the more. You know, but if even like I don't understand why so many, even with the religions of the world, even though I do believe the religions are really only controlled by the one technological God that rules, that actually has dominion over this earth. But that doesn't change the fact that a lot of human beings do think they are spiritual, but they still have no problem with going away from the human thing and going, I mean, do they really, if they really do believe even in this Jesus and all these ones that they do think are gods, even though they're probably just representatives of what we should be, I think. and I'm not saying there isn't creating, but I'm saying that we also, that if we were in the image, I mean, it's kind of what the word is an analogy or something. If the God created us in their image, in his image, or there again, I don't know about that. I think the he part belongs more to the God of this world, quite frankly. I think that's why it's all a confusion, because even to bring the Bible in is going to create more confusion. But I think that, if we are meant to create as well, then that is different to the technology that we are now using to create. Now, okay, once again, I've put my foot in it because I've actually kind of went for the technology by saying that, and yet I'm actually trying not to do that, because some people might say, yeah, well, look, maybe the technology was given us to create. That's what we're meant to do. Well, look, why would you use technology to create if spiritual beings, all connected, create reality with your thinking? It's like, sure, you could create with technology, but no, that isn't how the world works, I don't think. I think human beings are creating right this very second with their thinking, but their thinking has been taken over by technology. So they are not directly creating. Their thinking is being manipulated and controlled by the technology. So the technology, and who controls the technology, is controlling then the human being. So it's like their gifts are exploited, but they are not using their gifts for their own benefit. Does that make sense? That's how I think I see it, if all this is right. So in other words, if I have some ability, right, but I'm working for someone else and they're using my gift, my ability, my trade, my whatever it is, it's the same thing. I'm not using that just for myself or creating for myself or creating directly. Someone else is using my ability to create. They're benefiting from it. I'm probably not even benefiting from it, if you follow me. And this is how this world works. We're always working for someone else. Okay, so some of us might like it. Some of us might be rewarded physically with a lot of money and stuff like that, depending on what your ability is. But you're still not in control of it totally yourself. Now, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be a celebrity or to be people. I think I would use celebrities as an example, because I don't think they're fully master of their own domain. I think they do very well out of what they do. Their abilities or their little creative things are, they're well rewarded for them. Now, but are they master of their own domain? Do they have total control over their lives? Do they have to bend a bit to get that? Now, that would depend on their abilities and how talented they are and how much they would value their own freedom, and also how much they believe in the technological God that would control things too. Because some people, quite frankly, and in this world, as I say, humans like to be led, I think. Humans like to have a leader. This is something that I now see and that I realise, and we're all like it. I know I've been like it too, always wanting advice, always wanting to back up my idea or opinion, never thinking that what I thought alone is of any importance. Now, this is how we operate. But I think this might be because it just occurred to me, because we're spiritual beings and we're all connected, but we're now disconnected because we don't know we have that connection. Maybe this is why we do have this kind of pack mentality. We actually need to be connected, but we're not connected and we don't know how to be, and we don't realise that we really are. So we have this need, but then we give our power over to the technology or to people or to beings who represent us, and we follow that, and we have that need. But I think that's because everything is a muddled up. Because have you ever wondered, like, even like I've always been, more of a loner, but I have still felt isolated, and that sometimes that need to, like now, I feel the need to give this information to someone, if there's anyone at all. It's like to keep it in is hard. Um, Now, that could well be because we are all connected, but we're disconnected. In other words, we don't feel whole. You know how humans always don't feel that they're whole. They feel they need a partner, or they feel they need love from something else, or some admiration, or some acknowledgement, or all these things. I know I have most of my life, like even just to be understood. And it's all part of this disconnection, I think, that fits this scenario that we're spiritual beings in a human body, we're all connected, but we're now disconnected, and our thought creates reality. So we should be combined in creating whatever we want or need, anything. Instead, we're all separated. Not only are we separated in this world by the fact that we do not realize this and can't connect, but we're also all in different circumstances. We're all in a hierarchy in a way too. We have this duality world where there's different people of different sorts, and everything is separate, and everything is right, wrong, everything is, all this. And this is why we don't feel right, I think. We feel, I think, I don't know, we do feel as though we're in a wrong world in some ways, even though we kind of like this world as well, but we also feel, I don't know about you, but yeah, don't you feel that maybe, yeah, you do feel as though you're in a kind of alien world. And, maybe that's the point. We're not in a world that is natural for us. And we're now using the artificial stuff to try to make us more connected and more comfortable, but it's not the right way. It's not the natural way. It's actually taking us further away, I think, if this is all true. So, or if there's any truth in it, or, and if it's all true, boy, are we going in an opposite direction. Most of the time, I think humans are just in this duality that is set up in this world. But eventually, we're going to go completely in one direction. And the human here, the non-human over here, the non-human entity, the non-human existence, the technical existence, I think is the way I would describe it, appears to offer us a lot, because we are now so limited. So we think, oh, that's offering more, little realizing that over here in the original human at its best already had much more to offer than what's over there. And that is going away from the human, away from the natural abilities. And quite frankly, I think that even if I'll say this as the final thing, even if there are, it's a bit like in that movie Blade Runner, right? I hope that some people have seen it, but in that there were replicants, right? Replicants were artificial human beings. They looked like human beings. They could do the same as human beings. You couldn't tell them from human beings. The only difference is they were not quite as, supposedly, not quite as sensitive and quite as feeling, right? And so they had to be eliminated by the humans when they got naughty, a bit like we fear artificial intelligence, thinking that could come back at us. Same thing. But what it turned out in the end was that the replicants, the artificial human beings that looked like humans, were the same feeling. In fact, you could see that they had feelings and they reacted and all the rest of it, the same as humans. But in the end, it turned out, according to the movie, that the replicants were really only killing other replicants. In other words, the humans were only killing other humans because the replicants thought they were human, and the humans that thought they were humans were also just replicants because they had been taken over too. You know, they all their memories and all their stuff they thought was real, just as the replicants thought they were real. But they were all replicants, is what I'm saying, you know, and that turned out to be the end of the thing. And, you know, it was very hard for the replicant or the non-human to actually not realise that they were not human. In fact, it didn't really matter in the end because that's all there was. And I think this is the case on this earth. Like, it doesn't really matter if there are different sorts of beings here or even different sorts of humans. And when I say different sorts of humans, I mean some that are more human than others. Because I think that if it's not under any of our control much, then I don't think that just because you're a more technological being that you're going to be favoured down the track. If you know you know, to some extent, if you do not control your reality, then you know, someone or something else will, and they do, and you know, you'll all be dispensable. They will not particular. You know, even if they can, even if I control everything and I can control a non-human better than a human, I still might not want as many of either around, you know. So it's like that. So I don't think that there's any benefit to anyone or anything on this earth at the present time really going down the path to where even if they think it was their natural state, you know, by that I mean that I don't think that I don't think if you're a replicant or a human or whatever, that you're necessarily, you know, going to be better off by going down the more and more the technical path. Because I think humans always, and in fact I think this is true because Eve in the Garden of Eden went along with the serpent, who was more technological, right? Who was different to human. So humans have never really had anything against other types. The other types don't like the humans, probably be more like it, be closer to the truth, I think. They fear the humans more, and they want to perhaps influence and control the humans more. But I don't think that humans necessarily want to take over other things. In fact, they're the opposite. They're like Eve in the Garden of Eden. They're impressed by the technology and the stuff, and they're easily deceived by it and easily convinced that that is sometimes even better than them, which is kind of strange. But that's so I don't think that a robot should fear a human being, you know, or an artificial human should fear a human being, because humans, I think, well, I know that myself, you know, like I could, like I respect the animals just as much as myself. And it doesn't matter if some people tell me that they might be less intelligent than a human. I don't care less. I have great respect for them. And I can see abilities in them that I don't have, or even if I should have them, but I don't. But even if I had those abilities, I would still, you know, still like them and still see something wonderful in them and still, you know, not be against them, not look down on them. But see, that's a mindset, you see, that's what I'm saying. But just because you're better or worse doesn't mean you can't have a negative mindset towards another being. And but I think that humans in general, proper humans, actually don't tend to have that. And that's why they are easily seduced and tend to be innocent, even now. See, Garden of Eden must have been an awful long time ago, and yet that was understandable that in their innocence and infancy that they should be seduced by something that appears to be more interesting, or just even if they just offer something and they think it's all fun and games and think, oh well, that can't be right, I think I will eat at the tree and good and evil, I think I will see what this tree of knowledge is about, maybe there is something that someone's been hiding from, who knows. I mean, I know it sounds fantasy, but what I'm saying is that's I think as humans we are like that. I know I've been a bit like that most of my life. You trust and you think that, particularly if you think a certain way yourself, you tend to think that all other humans and other things on the planet think the same way, but they don't. Not everyone does think that same way, and some do develop more a colder view and become more technological. And even some humans have been dragged down that path to where their mind does change, and this is not beneficial for them either, because they're, instead of increasing their power, they think they're increasing their intellect, but in reality they're lessening their abilities, they're giving something up for that, and what they're getting in exchange is a limited intellectual technology that even they will eventually not even have any control over. So you give your mind over to something else, and it's the same as losing your mind. And if you lose your mind, you're nothing. You don't exist. It's death. It's death to the human being. And more so if, when you think of what I'm saying, is that if the human was meant to expand so much more, and instead they're going in an unexpansive direction that takes them further away from how they should have naturally expanded to where they would be at their ultimate best, and better, to be quite frank, if this is true, better than any technological path. That may be good, and for the technological being, they may be at their very best, but they are not the same as what is here on this earth. They are not the human type things. The humans were supposed to have the potential to develop a certain way. A technological being naturally will develop in a technological way. But the two are not the same. And if they intertwine, as happened many, many, many years ago, that does not lessen the technological being, because he's already at his limit. But the human being, by merging with the technological being, has given up their abilities and their development to where they would have developed to high things with the things that they had. In other words, because you're talking about a spiritual being as opposed to a technological being, technology develops differently to spiritual beings. And like I'm trying to say, if the spiritual being already had pretty much everything, was already given to them, they just had to utilize it. That's like saying you've got the highest technology already, you can't go any higher than that. It's just a matter of you learning how to use it. Then for them to go and go the other way instead has been, it's a bit like, I suppose it's a bit like this, I don't know, I'm trying to find ways to put how I'm thinking about it so that even I can get it and you can get it too. It'd be like, you've got I don't know, you've got two breeds of animal, right? One animal can do 10 different unique things, right? Much less create everything with their thought, dare I say. They can do 10 really things really good, perfect, really good. And then there's this other being that can do one or two things really well. And they decide to mate, merge which one is going to be the better off? The one that's got the 10 abilities already, or the one that's got 2 abilities? Humans, I'm relating to the 10 abilities, and the technological one I'm relating to 2. The human actually has nothing to gain by merging or mating with the 2 thing. The 2 thing, on the other hand, has more to gain, you see. I don't know whether that's a very good example, because I'm fishing, I'm trying to use, but I think I'm trying to make a point here, because it's a bit like anything, like, you know, a being that has the potential to be really superior in their own natural state has nothing to gain by merging with something that is totally alien or artificial to it. You know, it can only be limited by that. But if it's seduced and thinks that it is limited and has been made limited by the world and by being, like I say, if a bird is told that it can't fly, there's no such thing as flying, you know, it won't fly, and it won't think it can fly, and it won't even try. And then if someone comes along and says, hey, I'll give you a technological aeroplane and you can get yourself off the ground, it'll think, yeah, I thought that was a good little example. It's a bit silly, I know, in a way, but it is very much like that. In other words, why would you want to use technology to have abilities that you already had but were taken from you, and where you have been tricked into believing that they're not even there, some of them, and then go down a path that will give you limited abilities that to the abilities that you could have had easily? Because surely if you're a bird and you can fly, it's much easier for me if I'm a bird to just fly right now. Whereas if I want to use my technology to fly, I've got to go all the way to the airport, go through all the customs, all that stuff, and then, you know, maybe catch a couple of planes before I get even to a really long way away. You know, whereas a bird, it can fly where it wants, when it wants, all on its own natural ability. Why would a bird want technology to fly? That's what I asked. That's what I would say for the humans. Why would you want technology? If you're a bird and you can fly, why would you want technology to fly? You wouldn't need it, you wouldn't want it, you would laugh at it. But instead, if you were told that you couldn't fly, you'd jump at the idea of inventing a plane, and you'd think you were brilliant in doing so. Or if someone invented it, or whatever, you know, like science and all the stuff that has gone down through the years, like we do now, we think we're great if we invent something. You know, we never seem to really get ahead of it, though, do we, in this world? Have you noticed that? How no matter what happens, there's always still, it's only some that seem to really actually even almost benefit, and everything else always seems to be in chaos, and the world, it's, you know, this is all part of the duality and the way the world is run, and the way we have went and the way we are continuing to go more and more. And I wonder if we already haven't went too far. I still say that right this very second, you know, if everyone realised that they're all connected and their true abilities, that they could, yeah, probably, the sky's the limit, shall we say, and much, well, the sky's the limit, that's just a saying, but it would be much beyond that. But, you know, while we don't realise that, you know, you're a bird and you can fly, but you don't know that you can fly, then, you know, you won't. And you will find other means to fly, but they will be sad substitutes for the original thing. you know. It's like, you know, you know, anything artificial is not going to be as good as something that is authentic and natural. And I think most people would probably see that, you know. But then again, if you think that you haven't got a choice, and that appears to be the case with the world we live in, then you will go for that. But you know, but don't think I put this across very well, but I just give it a go. I just I just really wish that I was like some people, but also it's a matter of time too, because you know, like with all these sorts of things, I would advise people to watch a lot of videos and to really try to find these things out and to really study all sorts of things, the history. Just get a bit. The trouble is that you have to have the motivation for that, and I have to say that I can understand how you couldn't, because I wouldn't have had the motivation myself even not long ago. It's really quite a desperate, my circumstances and situation almost forced me. In other words, if it's a life or death situation, you will actually search for some truth because you think your life depends on it. But while you think that, I'll let everyone else do it and let just go with the flow, you do tend to you have no motivation to do it, and then there's time and interest and stuff. Even I get, you know, I think this stuff is, if it's true, it's the very essence of everything in the world. And yet, even I'm like, give me a break. I want to just get into this physical, silly world and do something stupid and something, you know, that I know is of no real benefit, not even real, you know, like, you know, go and just get back into this false technical material world. And you know that even myself, like I have to say that I want to do it all the time, because more so because we haven't got control over these abilities, and because the world is taken over the other way, and because it is a technical material, um, dare I say, mind confusing world, um, and we're so used to it, we even think we like it. And basically because we don't believe that we have any ability to do anything any other way, it's a comfort for us to enter into that all the time. And I do it myself every day. Right now, I don't want to really be making this video because I'm like, hey, why am I saying all this stuff? Why am I, you know, because I know that most people are not going to be interested. They're going to think like me that maybe it doesn't matter now, maybe it's too late even. And that's not good either, because I don't actually think that at this stage that it is too late, because I think that once it gets past a certain point, it will be, because once you give yourself over in too much in a one direction, even if you wanted to go back, you probably couldn't, but also you would get beyond the point of being aware that there is another direction even, you know what I mean? Because you'll be taken over. You know, it's like if you merge too much, if you get two breeds of creatures breeding over a long period of time, you know, eventually you'll end up with a different creature, you know, and you know, that will not be the same. You know, there won't be a human anymore. And so there'll be something else, and that something else will be vastly different to the human. And if there's any truth to this information that I've been presented with, it'd be a bit like saying, oh, well, look, I thought that story that someone told me was all fantasy, but it turns out to be absolute fact, whereas what they had been told turned out to be fiction. But by that time, they've bought the story and they went along with the fantasy and left the fact for dead and thought that it was fantasy. then it's at some point it becomes too late to get back into that, to use those facts or to get back to that reality. Um, and a bit like I say, if you start breeding foolishly with two different species, and you keep doing that, and don't say, hey, we shouldn't do this, or we should think about it, but you do it, and before you know where you are, you keep doing it, you're going to end up with something totally different. And you're never going to get back that original being, that original creature or whatever. Even if that original creature was by far the best, it will be gone forever. And you will end up with a pathetical substitute at best, maybe even something to where there's no connection whatsoever between the original creature, to where that creature is, well, for all practical purposes, totally extinct. And this has been human history, even with if you look at this planet, it's been the history even of other species on it and other races and different things. So, the old saying, when will we ever learn? Well, geez, it is hard to learn, but it's like if you see it right now and you really saw it and everyone saw it, I really think that if everyone saw it right now, or at least most people saw it, I don't think there'd be any hesitation in them doing, actually turning their back on quite a lot of what they now accept to be desirable, because they would actually probably realise that it's not in their interest, even for survival, to be going along this artificial path. Much less the fact that it will mean that they will be limited and that they will not be, not at the high human level, but just the fact that it could mean that they will not even survive down the track. And that's something that probably, that is something that science fiction paints. And I do think, personally, I do think that everything that is presented to us on our artificial screen is no less artificial than what we are living in this artificial reality, if you follow me. Now, I know most people wouldn't agree with that, but to me, it's all artificial. Everything around us is artificial. Everything around us is not, we do not have control over it. Our human creative thought might even still be creating things, but we are not consciously doing it anymore. And we haven't done it for a long, long time, I don't think. And, so it's like our abilities are not being used by us, they're being used by the technology that's around us. We even give we give everything to the technology. The technology is giving us little in return, but we think it's giving us a lot. All it's really doing is making us dependent on it. And that's like, once you're dependent on something, you're not a being that stands on your own, are you? You're not. But this is another deception too, because the internet gives the impression that it brings people together. This World Wide Web, we're all one. Well, yes, we were meant to be all one, but we were meant to be one naturally, not in this artificial internet. That is not us at all. That is a construct. That is a very limited connection by comparison with what we were supposed to have. And also it's deceptive because we actually don't fully control it, you see, whereas the other way, it is all us, we have full control over it. Our natural internet, our natural connection, we have control over that. This artificial internet, we actually don't have control over it. We have limited control over it. And it is also not natural. It's not natural 100%, and therefore it is not natural for our natural human body. That's just putting it very basically, even though that is probably not the whole picture. And I'm sure that even many intellectual scientific people could probably push holes in that. But I'm just putting it at a basic level. Now, you know, I know that many people could find fault in what I'm saying. But I think sometimes even some great people have said, if you keep things simple, you're closer to the truth. And I think this is it. You don't have to understand every single thing about everything. But if you have got the basics, and if those basics are true, then you may not be an intellect, as I'm not, but you're still going to be further on the track than some of these really intellectual, smart people if they're dealing in science that is taking them in a wrong direction, that is not true to what they were meant to be. It might seem clever to us. It's very impressive, like Eve seduced in the Garden of Eden by the serpent or whatever she was seduced by, seemed impressive. You know, a bit like a magician, seems impressive. You know, his magic seems impressive and fools people and tricks them and deceives them. But, you know, is it a good thing? You know, you look, I think most people, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but look, if you keep things simple and natural, even if you think it's not perfect, even though it might be, but even if you think it's not, you will still have much more control over that, is what I'm saying. Whereas if you if you let something that is much smarter than you, or you think is much smarter, even if it's not, but if it's technological and you don't fully understand it and you do not have full control over it, it's got beyond you. And if you have to then trust completely that that thing has got your best interests at heart. Now, if you look around the world and look at everything, you honestly think everything is really good. Now, okay, look, some people might say, oh, it's better than this and has been. Look, you know it's not. No one in their right mind could say that, especially the closer you look. If you don't look too closely, you might say, well, I'm not doing too bad. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing better. You see, this is another thing too. If you don't have the right comparison, if you see yourself as, if you don't think that you could have had more naturally, and you think that all this complicated stuff that you don't understand and that you know you don't really have full control over, you think, oh, I'm just going to go with that and see where it takes me, even if it takes me down into a deep pit. If you keep things simple and natural, and you can see it and you understand it, and you have some control over it, you know, you will at least not be going into deep waters where you don't know what's really happening. And, you know, and you at least will have a little bit of control and direction to how you know, it's just common sense to some extent that things get, if you don't fully understand something but you're being led by it, you really don't know where you're going, you know. And you know, to be quite frank, you know, like if you've got other people deciding your future, you let the great scientists of the world, who you only have to look at even examples on your TV shows, and they're meant to be comedy. You know, they get obsessed with their creations. They get obsessed with their science. They don't care or even understand where it's going themselves. They just get obsessed with their own obsession, with their own brilliance almost. And they have no intentions or even would even have intentions. Or even if they start out with intentions of thinking, oh, this is going to benefit this or that, humans or whatever, that never seems to be where it really goes. And it probably wouldn't, because they don't actually have a full goal half the time. They're natural. It's just when people get into certain fields, they just get obsessed with their own field and their own brilliance, and they don't see the whole picture, even for that matter. They just work in their own field and they don't actually know where it's going, and they don't actually and also they don't know any different too. That's another thing too, because if they think that that is the best too, and they don't actually think in terms of in any sort of spiritual way, oh, how should I say that, like I say, if they don't hold to any beliefs, but also if they did hold to the beliefs, they probably wouldn't need that so much anyway. You know, not if see, that's the whole thing. See, if I go back to those basic points, human beings are spiritual beings in a physical body. Their thought creates reality, and they're all connected. I mean, it if that is true, you know, you could think about that yourself. If you really thought about it, you don't need anything more. Those three things actually solve every single scientific, medical, spiritual, physical, mental, any problem, anything would almost be possible to be fixed up without having to understand a single atom or a single anything. In fact, all that stuff could be all rubbish in a way, couldn't it, if that be the case? It could well be that things are very, very simple, and that all that stuff is, even all the technology is complicated and appears to be impressive, but it's actually all, well, by comparison, it would really mean that it's complicating rubbish in a way, because it's unnecessary, and it's like primitive by comparison with the pure instant ability to do everything and anything, if that is the case, the truth, and the real bottom line thing of what human beings originally were and are naturally meant to be. It's kind of both mind-boggling and should be uplifting, but for me personally, it also sounds incredibly tragic and incredibly, yeah, the duality certainly comes in there, because that is definitely not positive. Because it means that there's great potential there, and should be one way. But if it's gone the other way, it's like, yeah, it's like total loss then, if that was the case. If you've got great potential, but it's a bit like everything in life. If you've got great potential, but you decide to go down another path to where you end up with, you know, not doing anything, then I guess that's great loss. And that seems to be how we are. And that's, I know, it certainly applies to most of our lives too, in some ways. But I'm saying that on a bigger scale, if it's really that kind of simple, even though it still would there again, like, it's like a child. If you give them a gift and say this is what your ability is, but it's almost like you wouldn't know what to do with it. But if that's the case, and then you go down a different path to where others show you that this is how you play. You don't use your natural gifts, you play with some artificial toy or something, instead of making magic with your mind, like, yeah, or in other words, like, I suppose to be a bit like in Bewitched, right, or in the genie type thing, where basically they want a teddy bear or a doll, and all they have to do is click their fingers and it's there. But instead they have to go all across town and go to a toy store and then pay for it, and maybe not even have the exact toy or teddy that they actually want. Like, whereas if they could create it, they could create it exactly what they wanted. Um, it's kind of like that, maybe. I'm trying very hard to find, getting something going in my head to find some way of comparing, or because even to me, I find it unimaginable in a way. And yet, if it's true, um, the human race has certainly deteriorated into a great big tragedy, if that's the case. Um, and somebody's laughing, or at least I don't know whether they're laughing or whether they've just had the need to do it. You know, why did the serpent lure Eve away? You know, like, why did he offer her that? What was his gain? Must have been some gain for him to do it, or must have had some attitude towards Eve and Adam, or that, you know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah, it's just another example, but like I say, I think there's a bit of truth to all that sort of thing. You know, but at any rate, I think I'll leave there because this is a bit exhausting for me, and I don't know whether I've got it across as well. I was trying to throw in a bit of history, or when I say history, I mean like the reason why, if those basic things about humans are true, but why we now do not operate that way, and why humans have evolved or devolved into what we are now. And I've looked for that reason and based it on what I see around me and based on what others have shown and the history. And even that I have not looked into enough, because some people have been looking into these things for years and years, and I am not that way inclined. But like I say, it's a bit like if you thought you were going to die tomorrow, you might get a bit desperate about trying to find a cure. Whereas if you're basically healthy most of your life, you're probably too lazy to even be bothered to worry about health things or to find cures for a particular illness. But if you're riddled with it, you might try anything. And it's kind of like that with me. Like, I'm not particularly brilliant, but it's more desperation and circumstances that have forced me to see some of what I now consider to be these truths. And I can't say that I'm happy with what I've found. I should be. But because of the fact that the world is the way it is, and because even finding these things out, I'm not able to utilize them. And there's going to be, like I say, the duality of the world will always come against you too. In fact, sometimes in this world, the more you know, if no one else knows it or very few people know it, it's not actually going to be an advantage to you. In fact, it'll be a big disadvantage because, like I say, it's it doesn't fit with the way of the world at all, and 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 the that the entity that does have the control over the world in a way. This is not like, it's not something that they want us to keep playing in the video game. Like, they want us to keep playing in it. They don't want us to create our own game or create our own reality. They want to play in their video game reality that is all, you know, already staged and already set up, and to where you create for them, but you're not aware and you're not creating it for your own benefit, and it's not your direct, and also you're in opposition because, like I say, you're not using you're not even aware that you're creating a lot of the stuff. And if in other words, it's like this, right? This, and I'll just finish up this. Be a bit like, hey, the video game sets it up so that I'm made angry, right? And this happens all the time. In fact, on a daily basis. So I'm not happy, so I'm angry. My subconscious is unhappy. So that means that my subconscious is sending out negative, destructive thoughts. And even consciously sometimes too, because if it's really hitting me, like if I'm in a war zone, then I'm going to be negative consciously and unconsciously. And so I'm going to be sending out those negative, destructive thoughts. And human thought creates reality. So the video game matrix reality that surrounds us, that is controlling us, sets up the anger, then your anger creates the thoughts that create the physical reality, which then is negative. This, I think this is how it probably works, because, and this is why things always seem to not work out in everything from the littlest things, because not everyone is going to be bombarded with quite as much negativity as someone else, but it's still that thing that they are able to do this because of the control and because of the setup and because that we're in the video game, we're in this control type of thing, and we accept this and we play in it, but we are not aware that we react to all these circumstances and things that are the video game, and that then our thought creates the reality. And also if it's combined with groups of people, other human beings, because we're all connected, you can imagine the chaos. And this is why I think the world is in not ever in total harmony, because how could it be when we don't know what's going on? We're not aware that we're even doing anything ourselves, because we only think we do things if we physically do things. And even then we believe half of what the video game tells us. So it's a mass confusion all round. And I pick up on it now on a daily thing because I accept this. And so therefore, if you know what to look for and you understand things a little bit, you will notice it. But if you are like I was only before, where you're living and believing everything in this video game reality kind of, that is all set up and all artificial, and even controlled now by artificial means, because technology is artificial and it controls everything more and more, then you are a victim of it. You will react to it, and your reaction then creates thoughts that send out, and indirectly and directly by combination with other people, because it's complicated. In fact, even I would say that I don't understand it because it must be terribly complicated. But just the implications, if those simple things are true, then this is why there has never been and never will be at this stage any way of anything ever stabilising or always being all right. And it's only the people who have got the most control over these concepts. But by this I mean the ones that control the video game. I don't mean like me or you. I mean, because, you know, I can't control the video game. And I'm not aware that my thoughts are creating reality. And even if I am, if I'm going to be bombarded by the video game, I'm still going to be reacting to it, even if I'm aware that I shouldn't be reacting to it. How can you not react to what is in front of you? You see, this is what I'm saying. So it is a very difficult thing for us now. Very difficult. For some of us, it is like this is pure hell in a way. And to realize it makes it even worse, because while you're in oblivion and you think that everything's just accidental and random, you still think you've got control to some extent. And also you don't, you play in the game and you still think there's a point to playing. Whereas even, you know, like even now, I sometimes feel quite futile about it, because you think, what is the point in playing? And yet you can't, and yet you're forced to play anyway. It's like, I don't want to play in that game of football. I know I'm going to get hurt, but they're like, you've got to play. You know, they force you into it because it's there in front of you. And they're like, you'll play for your life. And you'll play, yeah, a bit like some of the worst movies where they're like, you'll play for your life anyway, because we're all obliged to play in the video game, because we have to play in it just for our survival, even for our food and for our thing. This is because this is the way it's set up. It's a video game. And then once you start playing in it, you're going to react to it. So you give out negative stuff, or you know, maybe sometimes positive, but you struggle, you know. But I'm saying that you don't have a lot of even if you're aware of abilities, you know, unless you could isolate yourself, and who can do that? You can't even do that now, because everything is everywhere. You know, you can't get away from the internet. You can't get away from the technology, I don't think. You can't get away from it. It's everywhere in every single aspect now. It covers the whole globe. Everything covers everything. There's no, you know, there's very few people that could even get away from the actual video game. And even if you are away from it, chances are that you're still playing in it too, because I'm pretty sure that, yeah, that it's, you know, it would be covered. In fact, the only way you wouldn't be in the video game at all would be if you were so non to where they just left you alone because you didn't have any input at all. In other words, to where you couldn't connect at all. That would, I would think that would be the only way that you wouldn't be part of it. Because I think the whole idea now is for everyone to be connected up, but not connected naturally, like I think we should have been, but connected artificially. And this is, you know, and the only ones that aren't are those that aren't influencing probably the billions and billions. I would think that it would be, and even they would probably be affected at some sort of physical level anyway, I would think, because I think the more natural you are, the more you, I think the more this artificial technology is actually uncomfortable, you know, like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel not quite comfortable about it, even at a physical level, but that's just me. But then again, you can get used to things too, you know. So if you, it's a bit like if you eat certain types of food, you know, you are what you eat, as they say, and you adapt to it, and it may not necessarily be for your benefit, but or it may, you know, you will adapt to it, but it still may have long-term effects that change you, that may not change you, you know, for the better. It may not kill you. It might even too, for that matter. But what I'm saying is that, you know, you probably wouldn't even realise that you could have been so much better, you know, by eating something else maybe, or so. I don't, you know what I'm saying? You know, I'm just trying to fish for sort of vague examples, because I know that we don't have a choice half the time anyway. I mean, you know, like, you know, like if I go to the fruit shop and there's only an apple and an orange, and I want a banana and they don't have bananas, so I haven't got the choice to have a banana, even if the banana is better for me. You know, that's, I know that's not meant to be taken literally, those fruits, by the way. That's just, I'm just come to me now. So I'm just saying that you don't always have the choice in this world for what is the best for you. I don't think that I have any choice for what was the best for me. I'm aware that every day that I'm only got certain choices, and that none of those choices are things I would choose in a perfect world. You know, I know they're not good choices, and I know they're not beneficial to me, but those are the only choices I've got. And I think that's how humans are now with technology and stuff. I think they're like, oh, well, look, even if they had second thoughts about, like when we first got computers, some people had their doubts about whether they should bring computers in. Some people might have even debated it. Same with so many devices. But, then they probably say to themselves, yeah, but what's the alternative? You know what I mean? And so that's because that's based on the information they're given, because they see themselves as limited because that's what they've been told and that's what they believe. They're a bird that can fly but doesn't think they can fly, so they're looking for an alternative way to fly, you know. And that I thought that was I'm still going with that because I think it was probably the best I could come up with. But you know what I'm saying. So, and that's how we are. To be a bit like, oh well, look, you're sick. How many times have I done this where I'm sick and I say, well, look, I don't really want to take those tablets to get better, but what's the alternative? I could suffer it out for a while and hope that nature heals, and it probably will. But, you know, I really want to be able to do it like that naturally myself, but I don't think I can. So I better go and get the pills, the artificial stuff, even though I know that it will help me get through the illness at the time, and maybe even eventually I'll be, you know, better. But I still know that taking those things is probably not natural for my body, you know. And this is, I think, how we are, how we think about things. Like we probably might have doubts about some things that are artificial, because I think most humans have always, like, I don't know how long, maybe now we're getting so used to the technology that we think it is good. And I think this is the thing. Whereas I think in the past, we probably did think, oh, it's good to be natural, it's good to be human. But we still would run to anything that was offered to us if we get ourselves into that frame of mind where we think we can't deal with it naturally ourselves. And essentially that has always been the case. Most of us, don't, and I would have to say now that if the technology becomes really great, it might take an awful lot of human thought, even if we acknowledge that human thought can change things or can create reality. Even if that was the case, it might take a lot then to surpass the high technology that we've now incorporated, because we've got so much of it. You know what I'm saying? And but that would be a decision, and I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think humans would acknowledge that, and I don't think that they would try it. And because most humans would probably say, hey, haven't we already been there? Like, we haven't always had technology. We haven't always had, like, say, the internet and all that. So they probably say, hey, were we better off or worse off before it? Well, I would say that that's for people to decide, but they could be deciding even under illusion. And also, the older you are, you will only have the comparison with years ago. Whereas if you're real young, You will be born into a computer world, so you will not know what it would have been like without it anyway. And also, the trouble is that if you ask people what it was like years ago, they won't tell you necessarily the benefits of not a computer. They will probably discuss how there was different problems in the world at that time. In other words, a bit like saying, like, oh, it's a bit hard to explain because I know what I'm thinking, but how to put it across without um, perhaps offending people or I don't know, or not making the point clear. Like, like, you know, we may have had more freedoms going back a few years in different areas. But some people might say, oh, yeah, but then we had other problems another way. Look, I don't think that's the point. I think that's where the deception comes in. That's where the duality comes in. I think you do have to, because even I wasn't around 100 years ago. So if I'm sticking up for older times, I have no reason to do that because I wasn't around. And I know that there were more, they tell me there was more illnesses in different ways and that maybe humans didn't live as long. But hey, I'm just not buying it. I'm just saying that, hey, I don't buy that. Sure, maybe 100 years ago humans might have lived a little bit less than now. But I'm saying that if you go much further and further back, I believe we lived a lot longer. But that's so far back that we can't remember it or prove it. So it becomes invalid. But I'm saying that I think that's the case. But also, that's not really the question anyway, because you don't know right now how long everyone is really living or how healthy everyone really is, you know, because the video game, you know, operates differently at different times. There will be different illnesses and different diseases and things around at different times. So it's no good comparing to when they had different outbreaks of this or that. It's always going to be something, you know, and some things we will be more aware of than others, you know. And either way, whichever way you look at it, as far as human longevity goes, you're still only talking about 5 or 10 years, maybe 20 years extension. That's assuming you believe that to be true and whether that is still going to be valid in another 40 years. You know what I mean? Don't presume just because we've extended our life from 75 to 85 in the last, I don't know, 40 years or whatever it is. I don't know, because there again, you have to believe statistics, and I don't look into any of these things. But that doesn't mean that in another 40 years that that's going to continue. You know, you believe what, you know, but I say, I don't believe that. I look around. I look around. I look around at the so-called real reality, as real as what it is, and say, hey, um, how many people I know my age that I've known that were my, you know, that I might have known, how many of them are alive? And I would have to say, you know, I'm not going to go into that, but I would be surprised. And also some of those people, some people I would have thought would have, you know, lived longer than me. And, you know, like I would even say, even with myself, that I would have thought that in a more healthy world, that I could have almost pinpointed how long I could have went. Whereas now I say this world is not the same. And I say in a technological world, I do not think that I'm going to go as long. This is what I think. This is what I know. Now, on the other hand, if technology starts then offering me some other means to extend myself, I'm going to say, why is this? And I'm going to say, what does that really entail? And also, if the premises that human thought creates reality, we're all connected and we're really spiritual beings in a physical body. So this physical domain is not really our natural domain, or and not meant to be forever, then have I really got something to gain by going into an artificial world and staying in an artificial world, and a world that is going to be more artificial? What have you got to gain? Is it, are you going to gain anything, or is it all loss? But you would have to actually believe those basic points, and you would have to comprehend that and take for a reality, the real reality, that this world, this technological world, is the fake world, is the unnatural world, is the limiting world. And if you want to live in a box, in a shoebox, in a matchbox maybe even eventually, in other words, I think the box will get smaller. You know, if you're a cockroach, artificial or not, that may, even a cockroach is not going to want to live in a box, you know. So, but hey, that's, I think, that's how I see it, based on what information I've been given. Now, if you believe it or you don't, all I'm saying is at least look into it. At least that's what I'm trying to do. At least I'm trying to say what is the true reality. And I definitely think that as I see it myself now, and you can hear the artificial stuff outside, by the way. I think this is another thing too. I think we live in an artificial, noisy, unnatural, unproductive world for human beings. Like, you know, this is the technological world, this loud, artificial, mechanical world. The spiritual world is whatever you want it to be. You know, I don't have to use a lawn. I shouldn't have to use a lawn. The lawnmower shouldn't have to be used to cut the grass. I don't think. If human thought creates reality, see? Yeah. So, and that is also, um, you know, you would say, well, that's just, she's being ridiculous. That is not a negative, and that is not. Whereas I'm saying, hey, that is a negative. That is a dark technological force coming against a natural force. That's what I'm just saying. But you know, but that, I know you think you're laughing and I'm laughing too. But at the same time, there could be some truth to it, right? But you know, that's another thing too. Most people think everything is random, accidental. You know, I watched a movie the other night where the fella thought the same thing, and I believe that the movies present more truth than what we realise, because there is no difference between that artificial world and this one. And so, you know, in that he come to the conclusion at the end that there are no coincidences, there is nothing random. Yes, that's right, that everything is as it's orchestrated to be. And that is even more so if human beings in particular do not think that they actually create the reality. You know what I'm saying? So, and we don't either, because now we've given it over. So whatever creative thing is still being created, but we are not in control of that creativity, because like I say, if you are controlled by the video game, by the matrix, by the world around you, this artificial world around you, that is not really something that you fully control, then you will not be creating consciously or yourself, and more so if you don't think you even have that ability. So you'll be pretty much just haywire. In fact, you'll be much more controlled by the technology and the video game around you, because everything is technology to a large extent. um, if you turn your TV on, you're watching, that's technology. So you're influenced by that, and you think that that represents your world one way or the other, even if you're just watching a movie. But if you're watching a science fiction movie or something that is a little bit out of what you normally see around you, you will say that's fantasy. You won't say that that is possible and could even exist, but you can't, but it's not in your actual um, it's not in your actual world that you see around you. Because like I was saying, if if the technological God is much more advanced, but as humans we are not aware of that, not aware of how advanced the technology is around us, and don't see most of it anyway, only see the more limited versions of it, shall we say, even like will gradually be pushed onto us more and more advanced. But by that time we will be quite immersed into it, just as we are now playing in the video game and have always been immersed in it. We will just be immersed even more in the technological video game. But as time goes on, as we've got further and further away from our natural being, there will be even less chance of us being aware of this, and less chance, therefore, to create our own reality as we would perhaps have created a totally different reality, whereas the technology will create the reality for us more and more. And that might be totally different to what we would have created had we been natural beings, shall I say. I don't know whether I'm putting this across right. I know I'm probably not, and I apologise, and I just wish that I was able to get the message or the idea or just what I think is probably the bottom line basic kind of truth of things across. It is hard, and I don't always get it myself. Even for me, it is. I'm saying that I think it's true, and yet even I half don't believe it, because it's so far away from what I thought my reality was. So I don't blame anyone if people think this is quite ridiculous. I would have thought so too myself only a very little time ago. And I wish that it wasn't true in a way. And yet, in a way, that's sad too, because it's kind of like saying, hey, we were perhaps a lot better than what we thought, really. And yet, we didn't know it. And so it slipped us by, and now we've become less and less and less. And so it's kind of like, it'd be kind of like finding out like I've always said this, like finding out at the very of perhaps the potential that you could have made while you were here, even for that matter. But I don't think that we should blame ourselves for that, and I don't even blame myself, even though I have for a lifetime, because if things are out of your control and you're in a world that you basically have very little control over, and even though you are having the input, you actually don't have control over how that input is being used. You cannot blame yourself for being set up. If you're set up for a murder, you can't blame yourself for that, because you wouldn't have suspected that you were being set up. And then if you're set up to do wrong things sometimes, no, okay, so you still have some choice with some things, but if the world directs you a certain way and your emotions and your buttons are pushed, and the setup is that they know all this stuff. Look, it doesn't really leave you very much choice. It really doesn't. We really are in a situation where there's not a lot of room to move, and yet we should have had huge room to move. The irony of it is that we should have been the movers, and yet we're being moved around like pawns. That's been the story of mine, and I'm sure it is I think the story of humanity. Especially now, I really see that. I really think that it's. I mean, I might be getting hit harder than some in some ways, but at the same time, I think that even some of the more luckier humans are still being moved around like pawns. Um, but I'm too busy feeling sorry for myself to feel sorry for them. But the fact is that everyone is really being pretty much that way. They don't seem to be operating autonomously much at all anymore. And even the world around them, they do not have control over it. They cannot say what goes around them even, you know. They think they're lucky if they can get a home of their own or something like that. But they still can't control what's going on in the street, or if they put up this or that or what. It's I mean, I know that, and all that probably sounds strange in comparison with the basic things that I started with anyway. It probably seems that we're really in a ridiculous pickle. It'd be like, yeah, like and I Dream of Jeannie, right? She can manifest anything, and there she is choosing to live with the human and not use any of her powers. It's the same thing. She's like choosing to live as a human, and she can manifest, which was like that in that show, wasn't it, where she could basically manifest anything, but she's with the human who's like saying you can't use your powers, you've got to be like a human. And so she's doing everything the hard way, you know. But in her case, at least she was kind of happy because she liked the fella, and she knew she could perhaps get herself out of things with the power. But the thing is that it's very much like that, I think, with humans, where they don't even know they can even use the powers, that even if they had to or wanted to, they don't think they have any abilities that way. They think all the answer lies in what science can offer them and in what technology can offer them, and that sort of thing. And that's how it now is, because we've been compromised and manipulated so much. And when I say manipulate, because I think even if there was intervention at some point to where we merged, shall we say, because I think that's another thing too, this merging with technology. But I think we did merge with technology in a funny kind of way a long, long time ago, the missing link. And I think that's compromised us, if anything, and yet some people might say, well, that was better. I can't prove it one way or the other, but I do believe that took place. But I don't think that it was a beneficial thing. I don't think that it was more to the benefit of the other parties merging, I would suspect, than my human beings. In other words, like it'd be a bit like if I mated. It'd be a bit like if I was a genius and I mated with someone who was really, not, like, oh, that's not a good example. No, that's not. I don't want to go there. No, it's not a good example. But what I'm saying is that the lesser being is always going to benefit more from that merging than the being that's already fairly good. You know what I'm saying? Don't you think? Does that make any sense? That's how I see it anyway. So, but even that is, when I say lesser, that's probably not a good thing too. What I am just saying really all along is that might have been how that being even saw it. But in reality, you're just looking at two different types of things. two different species, two different types of things. And what I'm saying is there's no benefit for the human to merge or to breed or to mix with the technical if the human, if it evolves on its own, will reach a capacity that is greater in its natural way than in any technological way. You know, the technological being or the technology, you know, cannot, it's different to the human and the human is different to it. They do not benefit one another. You know, the only way that the human cannot benefit from the technology, but the technology actually will never become human either. But the human, but if they use the human, you see, the technological being uses the human to create, uses the human for energy, that type of thing. So that being is benefiting more from the human, but the human is not benefiting at all from the technology, despite what it thinks. Because the human does not need the energy from the technology. By that I mean, I'm talking about beings here now, so I'm not talking about like electricity or that sort of thing, even though if I fully understood the so-called universe or whatever, there might even be some even things with that, I don't know, but I'm saying that the technological being benefits and uses the human because it uses the human to work for it, almost, you could say. The human thinks that it uses technology, but the technology is using the human. That's how it really works. If we actually understood the real picture, the technological being uses the human. The human does not use the technological being. It only thinks that it uses technology, but that being is using it because that technological being is infinitely more advanced at a technological level than the technology that the human is using. The technology that the human is using now is limited and is limiting the human and will continue to limit the human because it's like the technology that we have is kind of Stone Age in comparison with the technological being that operates the Stone Age technology and that gets us to work for him through the Stone Age technology. Does that make any sense? It probably doesn't, because you would have to accept that we are ruled by a God that is technological. But look around the world and say, hey, yeah, the world is now ruled by an invisible technology. The internet is an invisible technology. We know it's real and it's technical. You know, but we do know that it governs the whole globe, or whatever is, you know, this domain. That we do know. And you know, we don't actually ask why this is so and why it has come on us so quickly in such a period of time, and why no expense is spared in putting this in when we tend to be very stingy in doing other things for the so-called earth. We don't put a real lot into improving or bettering things in a lot. I mean, that's just what I think, but we seem to have plenty, we seem to have no limit to the amount that must go into these things. But I don't know, you know, I mean, some people might say, oh, well, isn't that, you know. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there because it goes on, and I think I've probably lost you all. I know I've actually even got confused myself. Not so much confused myself, but I don't think that I'm getting these things across too well, because I do think that you have to see it. You have to half feel it and know it and actually see it in your life and see it in the world, and then you do actually have to, I think, really look into a bit of history, and you almost have to at some point acknowledge that we are not ruling this world. Once you start to say, hey, I think things have slipped from us, something else is taking over, something else has taken over. If we could actually realise that, because I don't think we ever have, and even I haven't, then, and if you sort of see that being pulled from you more and more, and you actually sort of say, well, look, yeah, I do spend an awful lot of time on my technology. What did I used to do, or what was life before that? What would we do if we didn't have it? Um, you know, so we'd be frightened to even not have it now, because we've set ourselves up, or we have been set up to need it, to not be able to almost survive without it, even though I think that our survival depends on us not being dependent on it. See, so this is the catch-22 that we've now put ourselves into, because we accept these things when they first start. We don't look where they're going, and we give it the green light. We give all these things the gradual green light. It's usually gradually, and then they get more and more overtaking us. This is how I see it, and this is how I've looked at it, even though I also have been part of it and addicted to it, and have bought into it too. I'm just saying that I have bought into some of it too, but I now, a bit like so many times when you look back over your life, you can say, well, now that I look back, I can see where I went wrong, and I can see I made the wrong choices. Of course, it's too late by then, and this is how it is, you know. Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, I suppose I spent far too long on this, and I'm a bit exhausted, and overstayed my welcome, no doubt, and you know, so I'm